In Ann Arbor, the story of Michigan basketball is being rewritten from the inside out. After finishing the 2024-25 season, ranked 12th nationally in defensive efficiency, the Wolverines faced a paradox. On paper, their defense was elite. On the court, it was cautious, effective, but rarely disruptive. They forced few turnovers, generated even fewer steals, and relied heavily on a skilled but limited center, Danny Wolf, whose offensive creativity couldn't mask his defensive vulnerabilities. Now, a new question defines the program's next chapter. Can elite size and traditional rim protection still anchor a championship caliber defense in a modern game dominated by pace, space, and perimeter versatility? At the center of this question stands a towering experiment, a new front court built around Yaxel Lendeborg and Aday Mara. Together, they represent a test case for an old philosophy in a new era. Dusty May's first season as head coach brought stability and statistical success. Michigan defended well enough to win, but their system rarely disrupted. The numbers told the story. 268th nationally in opponent turnover percentage, 331st in steal rate, and only 161st in block percentage. The Wolverines were structured, disciplined, and conservative, but not dynamic. Danny Wolf, the 7-foot centerpiece, exemplified that paradox. He anchored a sound defense near the rim, yet his lack of lateral speed made Michigan vulnerable to modern spacing offenses. Opponents frequently pulled him into pick and rolls, exploiting his mobility and creating open perimeter looks. The lesson was clear. The system needed to evolve. When Wolf entered the NBA draft and fellow big man Glad Golden transferred, the void left behind forced an immediate philosophical overhaul. Dusty May and his staff turned to the transfer portal with a clear directive to transform Michigan's defense from reactive to assertive. The offseason search produced its centerpiece, Yaxel Lendeborg, a two-time Defensive Player of the Year in the American Athletic Conference and the reigning AAC Player of the Year. Lendeborg arrived from UAB as one of the most decorated transfers in the nation. Standing 6'9" with uncommon agility, he carried the reputation of a defender who could guard all 5 positions, a sharp contrast to his predecessor. At UAB, his production was undeniable. 11.4 rebounds per game, among the nation's elite. 1.8 blocks per game, with a 5.1% block rate, ranking in the top 200 nationally, and a 2.8% steal rate, signaling quick hands and active positioning. His offensive efficiency, measured by a 123.7 rating, suggested more than just athleticism. It reflected intelligence and adaptability. As assistant coach Drew Williamson observed, he's guarded 1 through 5. He's guarding the point guard some days. He's guarding the big man some days. That's been one of the biggest surprises with him. Lendeborg was more than a replacement. He was a recalibration of Michigan's defensive identity. Beside Lendeborg stands Aday Mara, a 7'3" sophomore whose presence alone alters the geometry of the floor. Last season, in limited minutes, Mara ranked 3rd in the Big Ten in blocks per game. His per-minute production hinted at elite rim protection, but his role remained restricted by experience and system. That changes now. Roddy Gale Jr., his teammates, summarized the impact simply. Mara's ability to just distract all the layups around the rim, being able to clean up all the misses, is just something you can't teach. Mara embodies the traditional concept of rim deterrence, arms extended, space compressed, opponents reconsidering every drive. Yet his challenge mirrors the central question of the modern game. Can that size survive when pulled to the perimeter? The 2025-26 season will reveal whether Mara's instincts and reach can outweigh the speed of smaller lineups built to stretch and isolate. The integration of Lendeborg and Mara required Dusty May to reimagine his defensive framework. The system that once revolved around the unique offensive skills of Danny Wolf was now tasked with maximizing raw size, length, and athleticism. Assistant coaches Akeem Mistine and Drew Williamson emphasized a new identity built on rim protection and versatility, a mandate to guard positions 1 through 5. May's challenge is architectural: how to design a defense that empowers two dominant bigs without slowing the team's overall mobility. The Wolverines scheme will likely lean into controlled aggression, using Mara to anchor the paint while freeing Lendeborg to roam, switch, and disrupt passing lane. It is an inversion of the previous year's model, trading positional containment for calculated chaos. The shift is strategic, but also philosophical. Michigan is attempting to prove that size, when paired with adaptability, can still dictate modern basketball. If the new front court is the experiment, the Big Ten is the laboratory. The conference's blend of physicality and modern offensive sophistication presents the ideal and perhaps most unforgiving proving ground. Programs like Michigan State and Oregon, both of which successfully exploited Michigan's slower front court last season, have provided a clear blueprint. Use pace, spacing, and pick and roll action to pull big men away from the rim. Every opponent will now test whether Lendeborg and Mara can move laterally, recover in rotation, and contain guards in space. Each possession will become a referendum on the viability of traditional size in a perimeter-driven league. The tension between size and speed, between historical advantage and modern adaptation, defines the Wolverines' entire defensive experiment. Behind the marquee duo lies an often overlooked X-factor, freshman forward Morez Johnson Jr. Johnson adds versatility and physicality to Michigan's front line, allowing Dusty May to experiment with rotation. Lineups featuring Johnson alongside either Lendeborg or Mara, or in rare cases all three, could offer unmatched rebounding and interior presence. Yet, with every configuration comes compromise. More size can mean less spacing. More rim protection can mean slower rotation. The evolution of May's system depends on his ability to balance these trade-offs, to align personnel with philosophy. His adaptability, tested during his first season, now becomes the defining variable in Michigan's defensive future. The consequences of this experiment reach far beyond preseason analysis. If successful, Michigan could field one of the most dominant defensive units in the nation. A fortified paint would force opponents into low-efficiency mid-range attempts, while rebounds and block shots could ignite fast-break opportunity, transforming defense into offense. A top 50 national defensive ranking would be within reach, positioning the Wolverines as legitimate Big Ten contenders. But if the system falters, the results could be costly. Persistent perimeter exploitation could expose Lendeborg and Mara, forcing constant rotations and breakdowns that negate their interior advantages. Michigan's defensive identity and its postseason aspiration hang in the balance. The Lendeborg-Mara experiment is more than a roster adjustment. It is a referendum on philosophy. If it succeeds, Michigan will have demonstrated that size, properly integrated into a modern defensive system, can still win in the era of spacing and speed. It would offer a new blueprint for program building, proof that a team can dominate from the inside out without sacrificing agility. But if it fails, the message will be equally clear. Traditional twin tower lineups are relics of a bygone era. The cautionary tale will reinforce the modern orthodoxy that perimeter versatility and switchability are the cornerstones of sustainable success. For Dusty May, the outcome carries personal weight. His adaptability, his system, and his strategic credibility will all be measured by how this experiment unfolds. As the 2025-26 season begins, The Wolverines stand at the intersection of tradition and innovation. Their future, and perhaps the next evolution of defensive basketball, will be decided not by statistics alone, but by whether size can still bend the modern game to its will. This is Arena Madness, a report on Michigan's front court experiment, where the age-old question of size versus speed finds its next and perhaps defining answer.